3 months ago, I worked in investment banking, and so I was tied to cold, rainy London. But now I ran an OnlyFans and a coaching business, so I could theoretically live anywhere. The whole digital nomad life has always been something I've thought about, but never really that seriously. So today, I thought it'd be a fun exercise to try and work out where would be the best place in the world to live as an OF creator. I'll take a look at this from lots of different angles, as I think this is an interesting, nuanced question. Hopefully, if you're in the same boat as me, you'll find this useful, or at the very least, an interesting thought experiment. I'm going to start by looking at the finances and then move to other important factors that I've considered. 26 years ago, little Quinn was born in London. There are about 7 million people, but when everyone heard I lived here, more and more people flooded to London. Today, there are almost 10 million story losers battling for a tiny overpriced box we call home. But I can't take all the blame for the housing crisis.
If you're homeless, just buy a house.
Along with the fast growth to this little city, there's been a short supply of houses with minimal new builds. Not to mention any of the recent economic headwinds and rising interest rates. If you're a buyer or a renter in London, you better be making some bank if you want to live comfortably. This leads us to all these memes you've probably been seeing, from how much you can buy in a place like California, New York, London and Toronto, and comparing them to literal castles you can buy somewhere else for the same price. When comparing places to live, it's not all about how much house you can buy for your money. I could probably buy a huge house in the middle of a war zone, but you might find the place a little noisy at times. Normally speaking, the higher the average income of an area, the higher the house prices will be there too. Part of what you're buying is the ability to work in an area that has better jobs, higher pay, and more educated people who are also career focused. We can compare these places by using a price to income ratio. In Toronto, for example, the average house is 14.4 times more expensive than the average income. In San Diego, California, it's 12.4 times the average income, whereas in Dallas, Texas, it's only 7.1 times the average income. But this is a huge reason why so many people are moving from Cali to Texas. If you look at Houston, Texas, it's even lower at 5.9 times the average income. In Europe, you can see a lot of the same. For example, in the United Kingdom, London is 16.8 times the average income, but Edinburgh is only 8.6. In Italy, Milan is 20 times the average income, but in Turin, it's only 8.6. Shanghai has a price-to-income ratio of 47.8, which is totally insane. And so what you might be seeing now is a trend towards expensive cities having high price-to-income ratios. But actually, there are plenty of examples of places like Addis Ababa in Ethiopia or Douala in Cameroon that have price-to-income ratios of over 40, just because the GDP per capita is only around a couple of grand. This is where being an OnlyFans creator makes things really interesting, because your earning potential isn't really linked to the average income. If you're making $20,000 a month in California, then moving to Texas should have little to no impact on your revenue. But it could affect your profits because of the lower taxes. This is the second reason you're seeing a lot of people make that move. But we must not forget this can happen the other way around. If you move somewhere where taxes are way higher just to save money on slightly lower house prices, you might be worse off from that move. You must be paying attention to your taxes more than the average income of the area, which puts you in a pretty unique situation. Taking a look at different tax rates around the world will immediately put European countries amongst the most expensive. Belgium is known as the country that you don't need to have sex. The government fucks you already instead. Nordic countries are known for their high tax rates, but they have a reputation for being such amazing places to live, scoring the highest on the happiness index. We can see in this graph that living in Texas would be one of the cheapest places from a tax implication. This graph takes into account things like mandatory contributions to your pensions and surcharges, but it doesn't take into account reasonable expenses that you'll need to pay living in your new city. For example, in the United States, you're going to have to pay for health insurance. As you can see, this cost varies pretty drastically from state to state. We can take this a step further. If you move from your $1 million home in California to Texas for the same budget, you'll get a home that is more than 5 times bigger in square feet and sitting on a 5-acre lot. While the positives of this are immediately obvious, it would be easy to overlook the downside, which are extra expenses. Personally, I will not be tending to my 5-acre garden by myself. I'd probably need to have someone to look after that and the pool too, and even help clean the house if I'm working all day. And let's not forget that I'd be paying a lot more in air conditioning alone. How many units would I need to keep such a big place livable in the Texas heat?
Right now in Terrell and in Dallas, your heat index is 107. Everyone in McKinney is dead.
With 5 times more house, you can be sure that you're going to have more maintenance and fixture costs, as there will literally be more things that can break. If we're trying to compare these states like before, we would need to tax and cost adjust the home prices, which actually increases the gap slightly, making Texas even more affordable relative to California. Hi everyone, just interrupting myself here. If you're really enjoying my content, please subscribe. It only takes 2 seconds. Okay, I'll go now. Stepping back to looking globally again, I find this interesting because looking at the Nordic countries, people seem to be happy to pay higher taxes so long as they feel their governments are spending their tax money responsibly and efficiently, and that they are getting their money's worth. Which, anecdotally, I find that is something the US and the UK definitely don't have.
Just woke up in a fucking steaming mood, yeah? Because I live in a shithole! Do you know what I mean? Birmingham is a fucking shithole!
But from taking this rather narrow look at the market and what is best for a decently high-earning OnlyFans creator. Financially speaking, I would just benefit from living in a low-tax area, which may make you think, why don't I move to Dubai? So this is where I started to look past financial reasons, because if you're an OnlyFans creator, you're probably not going to want to move to a country that isn't OF friendly. Turkey, Russia, and Dubai in the EUA are all amongst the countries that have OnlyFans blocked. While you might be willing to put on a VPN and find someone who is willing to lie about your accounts just to get your business, this is probably where I draw the line in terms of risk. Living in the UK from day to day, all I ever get to experience is this. And when there are countries like Canada and Italy, it's hard not to take nature into account. Even my home country of the Philippines has some amazing views. I've been a city girl all my life, hence why I've mainly been comparing cities. But if you work fully remotely, just moving away from a major city to a smaller town can often drastically improve your quality of life. If we're comparing Canada to Italy, that brings 2 more important factors to think about. First, we gotta talk about languages. Lucky for me, I speak a little French and Italian from being an academic weapon during my GCSEs, and some Tagalog from being forced to speak it at home growing up. But I definitely need to spend some time brushing up on them before I make a move. The second factor to think about is food. I'm a huge foodie, and I don't know the last time someone has said they want to go out and eat some Canadian food. But thinking about eating Italian food or French food on a day-to-day basis is probably enough to make me ignore almost everything I previously mentioned before in this video. Hi everyone, just interrupting myself again. I offer OnlyFans coaching sessions on my website. The link can be found in the description below. And if you're thinking of starting an OnlyFans and use my referral link that is in my website, then you'll get free benefits too. So I've not named any exact places until now, and that's because the more I look into this, the harder it becomes a question to answer. I actually moved out of London a few months back and have been commuting 4 hours in and out of London while I was still working in investment banking. Luckily, those days are over, but honestly, that was already a great decision financially speaking. A part of me didn't want to leave the UK because it felt like I was still near my family.
I don't have friends. I got family.
But honestly, I could take a shorter flight to London from a lot of places in Europe. And now that I've moved away, I feel like I have the confidence to consider places further away from home. So France and Italy are countries I would rate highest for me personally, from a lifestyle point of view. The food, the culture, the pace of life, and the beautiful areas all stand out to me. From my financial point of view, Texas as a very high earner makes a lot of sense, as it comes with a lot of tax advantages. When I was younger, I read that most British people lived and died within 5 miles of their place of birth. People really didn't move, so I was happily surprised when doing research for this video that I found out that only 1 generation later, that number has risen to the average Briton now living 100 miles from their birthplace. People are more and more willing to move, and OnlyFans offering us the opportunity for flexibility is really something I don't want to take for granted.